who do you think could come through? And let's be honest, it's probably, just mathematically, it's probably going to be 2 or 3, isn't it?
A lot of these players are amazing. You don't get to play for Manchester United at any level unless you're in the top, 0.1% of footballers on the planet. And these youngsters are all mint. And I think the one that's impressed me the most for having the ability and the temperament has been...
Omar Berrada said that he wants Manchester United to win the Premier League by 2028. So we're going to look at who's going to win it. What will the team look like when Manchester United win the league in 2028? We're going to go through the current squad. We're going to look at some up-and-coming youngsters at the club and around Europe and work out exactly where Manchester United will be by the time we're lifting the 21st title. Jay, how are you?
I'm good, man. I like the fact we're treating this like it's scientific, like it's factual.
So Omar Berrada said,
we are going to win it in 2028. So let's see who's going to be lifting it.
So Omar Berrada said, I think it's the club's 150-year anniversary in 2028. Probably should know that for certain. If our trajectory is leading to a good place in that sort of time frame, then we'd be very happy with that, because it's not easy to turn Manchester United into the world's best football team. The ultimate target for Manchester United, and it's always going to be this, really, is that we should be challenging for the Premier League and challenging for the Champions League. It's one of the biggest clubs in the world. So he said that. He set down the sort of gauntlet there, thrown it down, and said, within 4 years, we want to be winning the Premier League. Firstly, before we get into the personnel, the people on the team sheet, where the current squad will be, do you think that time frame is realistic?
Yes.
Do you think it's bold enough?
Yeah, I think the danger is, if you say by 2025, 26, people think that ain't happening. If you say by 2032, 2033, then people think, ooh, that's a bit too far away. So you want something that's sort of not immediate, but not too far in the distance. And I think 2028 sounds about right. It sounds like if you're going to come in and change things at Manchester United and improve us and get us moving in the right direction and all that good stuff, then within 4 years, winning a title, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. I know we've just finished 8th, but the season before we finished 3rd.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the teams that have won titles in the past. You know, City were, finished 11th in 2008 and then won the title by 2012. I know obviously they spent more money than we're probably allowed to do or able to do. Chelsea, I think, finished 3rd in 2004, 2003.
Yeah.
Walked the title
the year after.
in 2005.
Yeah.
It can happen. It can happen. Look at the leap that Liverpool did when they went from sort of getting 70 odd points to getting 90 odd points. It was within a few years. So these things can happen if you're run properly, if you make the right signings, and if you've got the right manager, and as we're going to get into, if you've got the right young players coming through.
And I think that jump, it seems to always take about the same. It always takes between sort of 2 and 4 years, because the obviously, if it's going to ever happen, that is, there's plenty of teams who had money who never won the league. But when it happens, it usually tends to happen in that period, because that's how long it takes for a new regime to settle in. But it's also, managers don't get much more time than that. If it isn't working in that time, you're sacked and you're starting again anyway. So we look at Klopp, it took him 3 years or whatever it was. Arteta's, I think he's on his 4th season now, and he's there or thereabouts in terms of the points tallies, like you said. But if a manager gets 3 years and he's still nowhere near, well, you've got to reset again. So I think if it ever happens, it tends to happen in that 3 to 4 year period, because that's how long it takes for the momentum to happen. So we are probably going to be waiting that amount of time. Let me look at the current squad to start with, and a little bit of assessment on where these players will be. And we can kind of go through, not everyone, just crucial players, whether you think they'll still be here. So the people who presumably will be either leaving or retiring by the time this next Premier League title rolls around. Tom Heaton will be 42. I mean, he might still be here, but I very much doubt it on the playing side. Johnny Evans will be 40. He'll probably be starting every week still, so maybe we should leave him off this bit. Christian Eriksen will be 36, and I think it's largely reported that he's going to be leaving the club at the end of the season. Casemiro, again, will be 36 as well, and I can't imagine him extending on that current deal that he signed when he first arrived. In that next bracket down of maybe not certainly gone, but again, you're looking at this, and there's one name in this list particularly that really upsets me, that this is how old he'll be by the time we're hopefully good. Harry Maguire at 35, that's not the one. Victor Lindelof at 34, Luke Shaw at 33, Onana at 32. But the one that really bothers me is Bruno Fernandes is going to be 34 by then.
Why?
Because
Not why will it be 34. I understand the concept of time and that it's linear.
So the sun is at the centre of the solar system.
Yeah.
Earth goes round that once every roughly year.
Yeah.
Okay? Every time that happens, you age another year.
Right.
And it will have happened another 4 times than it currently has.
Yeah.
I think it's happened 2,000 times so far.
Right, okay.
2,024 times, actually. Happy birthday, Earth. No.
What's 2,024 times?
That's how many years old Earth is, Jay.
Earth is what?
So, right.
Earth is 2,024 years
that's
old.
why on January, whatever it is, it's not July, it's January the 1st is New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, Happy birthday, Earth, 2024. You get a big cake out with the shape of the Earth, and you put
2,025 years ago, for example, Earth didn't exist.
No, it was basically sort of loads of gas really close together, but it hadn't turned into a planet yet.
Right, okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, so
dinosaurs and man were walking around at the same time.
Well, we haven't brought dinosaurs back yet, have we? Because Jurassic Park's not real, Jay. Idiot. Okay. Bruno Fernandes, it bothers me because he deserves to win the Premier League with Man United. He's had as many good seasons for Manchester United as people who have won 3 and 4 Premier Leagues in their career. Anderson won 3 Premier Leagues at Man United. Tom Cleverley won the league at Manchester United. You know, Bruno Fernandes is one of the better midfielders we've had in my lifetime, and he's won an FA Cup, a Carabao, and a Europa. Actually, did he even win the Europa? He didn't. He's won an FA Cup and a Carabao. He deserves more than that. And I know
he'll get it.
Well, do you think he'll still be here at 34?
Listen, let me tell you a little story about a man named Brian Robson.
Yeah.
You know, for me, probably the greatest midfielder we've ever had. And for a decade, he was in an underperforming team, and he was carrying that team, and he was surrounded by players, not always, but by and large, who weren't quite good enough. But he kept going. He helped us win FA Cups. He helped us sort of get second place a couple of times or whatever. And then by the time we won it, he wasn't necessarily a mainstay of that team. He wasn't. I remember in '93, but he still played his part, and he still got his medal. And I think that's what will happen with Bruno. I think Bruno Fernandes. I've said this to you before. You know, I know he's not in a good bit of form, but I don't think he's past it. There's not much of him. He keeps himself fit. He's a player I think could maybe adapt his game slightly as he gets older. We've seen players do that. We saw Scholes do it. When he hit 30 years old, I think Bruno Fernandes has got the intelligence to do it. So he doesn't rely on as much of his energy, and he can rely more on his passing and his ability to sort of maybe try and control the tempo a little bit more of a game. So I think that Bruno Fernandes, by the time he's 34, can still be featuring for Manchester United. He might not be a regular, but I think, as Brian Robson was, I think he can be a squad member and still pick up his medal. Yeah. And let's not forget as well, if we're going to be a little bit sort of pedantic about it, what is it, 5 appearances now gets you a medal?
Yeah.
So he might even do something like that. He might even do 7 or 8 or whatever.
That's true. Let's look at the players who should be entering their prime then. Marcus Rashford will be 30. Obviously, who knows if he'll still be in. That's a big question we'll talk about. Mazraoui will be 30. Martinez will be 30. Bayindir the same. Mason Mount will be 29. Dalot 29. De Ligt 29. Malacia 29. And Anthony, of course, on that right wing. 28, just coming into his prime. Of those players, because let's be honest as well, we're sitting here and we're looking at these players. Most of these people won't be here, or certainly half of them won't be here. It seems like the squad rotation at Manchester United, you kind of lose 50% of your squad every 4 or 5 years.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Right. Just say yes or no whether they're going to be here.
Yeah.
In 2028. Marcus.
Yes.
Mazraoui.
No.
Martinez.
No.
Bayindir.
No.
Mount.
No.
Dalot.
Yes.
De Ligt.
Yes.
Malacia.
No.
Anthony.
No.
Right. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. It's possible that Martinez still is. It depends how well Ten Hag gets on and who's after Ten Hag, and whether, and I really hate saying this, whether there are some lasting effects of that broken foot he had.
He's never looked quite the same, has he?
No.
Not saying he's done, because he's not, and we love him.
No, of course not.
But we're talking about 4 years from now.
Yeah. Let's get into the sort of the mainstays of the team and the people who are still either pre-prime or coming into that real kind of mid to late 20s, those best years that players tend to have. You got Ugarte and Xerxes who will both be 27, Ahmad will be 26, Højlund 25, Collier 24, Garnacho 24, Dangor 24, Mainu will be 23, Yoro only 22 years old, and Obi Martin will be 21 years old. Of those, who stands out to you as people who you think will definitely still be at Manchester United in 4 years' time?
I think out of all those ones you've mentioned, the one that I think is most likely to still be here is probably I'd say Garnacho.
Over Mainu?
Oh, sorry, is Mainu on that list? Sorry, yeah, Mainu, sorry. Mainu and Garnacho are the two that I would expect to still be here for different reasons. I think Garnacho will still be here because I think he's quite settled anyway. And I don't think Garnacho, I mean, it might be different in a few years' time, but he's like, there's rumours all Madrid are looking at him or whatever, but I don't think we've seen anything where it's like, yeah, he's going to move. He's destined to move. Like with Ronaldo. I know Ronaldo was like one of the greatest players of all time, but you always had that feeling, sooner or later, he's going to go. With Garnacho, I don't know. I think he might surprise a few people and stay, at least till his mid-20s. Mainu, sorry, I missed him out. Yeah, 100% I expect him to stay. Euro, probably. The trouble with someone like Dangor, Euro, Collier,
Obi
Martin, they've got what? Collier, I think, has got 2 first-team appearances that aren't friendlies. Yeah. And the others, I don't think have got any. So, it's a great unknown. Me and you just sat here in, was it 20, when was it, that Pogba and Lingard 2012 and all them won the title, the FA Youth Cup, sorry. You'd have been looking at it going, Will Keane or Michael Keane or, I was a big fan of Ryan Tunnicliffe. These players, they might be around in a few years. And, even Ravel, who was a star, I know he had issues, no. Pogba left and then came back. Lingard was the one that actually ended up, I think, playing amongst the most games. And a lot of people didn't think he was built enough for it. He was just a bit of a late bloomer in terms of getting into the first team. So it is very difficult to say. I think if the players who are on that upward trajectory in terms of what they've achieved so far as a youngster carry on doing what they're threatening to do, then Obi Martin is one that at 21 could still be at Manchester United and could be banging in the goals because everyone raves about this kid. We've had Finn on doing the academy review. We've spoken to a few people as well who've seen him for Arsenal, and they all say the same thing. He's a phenomenal talent. And you think at 21, it's not like he's going to be like, well, I need a move now.
No.
So I think hopefully he could be.
How old was James Wilson when he left Man United? And he was someone who had amazing talent in the youth setup and never quite did it at sort of first team level. But I think he stuck around till he was 2021. So especially with strikers, because you don't want to lose that 25, 30 goal a season striker, you give him an extra year just to make sure. The last thing you want to do is sell someone who goes on to be a £100 million player. So I think Obi Martin probably will be here.
Can I ask you, can I do that? What about the others, right? Let's go through them again, because I didn't do it this time. Say whether yes or no, whether you think they're still going to be here. Ugarte?
4 years, I do, yeah. He's only just signed. I think he'll still be here.
Xerxes?
No.
Ahmad?
No.
Oyland?
Yes.
Collier?
No.
Garnacho?
No.
Gore?
No.
Mainu?
Yeah.
Euro?
Yeah.
Obi Martin?
Yeah, probably.
The ones that worry me there the most are the first 4.
Yeah.
Because Ugarte, we've got to see what he's about, see if he's good enough. I'm not saying he's not, I don't know. Unlike everyone else, I'm not an expert on PSG. Xerxes is another one. Looks decent player, tidy player. Is he effective enough? Can he get you goals and assists enough? Does that matter? We'll see. Ahmad, I love Ahmad, but this is his season. He's got to kick on this season.
He needs to do it this year.
He has to get into that first team and stick around it. He has to be one of those players who's, you have 13 or 14 players who are all first teamers, outfield players. He's got to be one of them. Because you don't just have 11, not in the modern era, but you can have 14, even maybe 15 players who are all considered first team. Like, it pains me to say it, but you look at City, Silva, Grealish, Foden, probably all consider themselves first teamers, as does De Bruyne, obviously, as does Rodri when he's fit, as does probably Kovacic.
As does Doku.
They don't all start at the same time. No. So I think he needs to be one of those players. Højlund's another one for me. I know it's only his second season, but I feel like this is a big season for him. He's got to at least, if not kick on a bit, at least hit the numbers he hit last season.
Yeah.
If he hits 16 goals in all comps this season, then I think people go, okay, that's okay. If it's less than that, and he goes big chunks of the season again without a goal, then he's another one people may look at. I'm not saying I'm giving up on him. I think he's a very good young player. I'm just saying you've got to be honest. If in 4 years' time we are going to win a title, then we need to see these players progressing each year. That's how it works. And if they don't, they're not going to be part of that, if indeed it happens.
In terms of academy players, obviously, like you said, you do the academy review with Finn. We've got this under-18s team that is just doing absolutely silly things at the minute. I think it's lost like 2 games in the last 18 months or something
it's been
unbelievable.
Breaking records and all sorts.
Just crazy numbers. Obviously, of those names of the people you speak to, there's many people that you hear about. You hear about the Fletchers, you hear about Kukunku's one that Kukunku's been mentioned recently as this sort of up and coming sort of physical freak, almost. He's 6'5" and 16 years old.
Old God will.
Which is absurd. You've got Harry Amash, you've got other players in there as well, goal scorers, people throughout the team who could sort of push on. From what you know, what you've seen, what you've read, what you've spoken to Finn about, obviously the academy expert, who do you think could come through? And let's be honest, it's probably just mathematically, it's probably going to be 2 or 3, isn't it? Because you're not going to get 7 academy players from this crop all starting for us in 4 years. It just doesn't work like that. I'm
gonna base it on not just what I've seen of him as a player, but from what I've seen of him in conversations and in, I don't often say this, but even in a chat with Stephen Howson, as someone who's got his head screwed on. And I think that's that can be the difference. A lot of these players are amazing. Yeah. They're just unreal. That's why they're playing for Manchester United. As a kid, you don't get to play for Manchester United at any level unless you're in the top, 0.1% of footballers on the planet. And these youngsters are all mint. Right, so it's not about their ability, it's about what happens whether they keep themselves fit, the temperament, whether, the sort of, in terms of a bit of lucky, when someone's injured in that position in the first team, they might get a chance, as we saw with Marcus against Midfield. And I think the one that's impressed me the most for having the ability and the temperament has been Harry Amash. I think you saw it on pre-season, and you can't just tell in pre-season games. According to pre-season games, Zidane Iqbal was one of the best midfielders you're going to see, so was Charlie Savage, and yet they never got a look in the first team other than those friendlies, really. The thing with Harry Amash is he's got his head screwed on. He can be quite self-critical, as he was when we saw him chatting to Steen. He was like, first game, was it against Rangers or whatever it was, I can't remember. Wasn't my best game, but he improved as the sort of summer got along. Only 17, so he's a little bit younger than some of the other players like Collier and the other players who've been getting into the first team for friendlies. Very exciting. He looks and acts like a Manchester United player in terms of on the front foot, getting down that wing, linking up well with Rashford. I know he's a left back, but you know what I mean, progressing forward. Yeah. Very modern style of footballer. So if I had to pick someone, I don't know. He might, I'm the guy that said Kiko Makeda was going to be the next big thing, and Terry Cook was going to be, challenging David Beckham for the wing and all that nonsense. But from what I have seen on the pitch and off it, which I think is just as important, he looks like a lad who's got everything you could want. Yeah. Great temperament, very mature, carries himself well, is an exciting type of player. Physically, he's only small, but he's quick, he's strong. I think he could be one that, bursts through. And also, he's got a doable route to the first team. Yeah, you could see a scenario where Malacia and Shaw come back into the first team. In a year's time, Shaw has moved on, or we've given up with him. No disrespect to the kid, but his injury record is terrible. And Malacia isn't quite the player we hoped he was going to be. And we're looking at it going, do we buy someone, or do we give Amash a bit of a chance? Now he's 18, a bit older. He gets a chance and he takes it. I know there's lots of ifs and buts and maybes, but that's the whole point of this video. So for me, it's Harry Amash. You've watched as much of the academy as I have. Who is it for you? I do like Amash, and yeah. I think, like you said, the crucial thing with him is that pipeline to the first team, because currently he's behind. I mean, obviously we played Dallow there ahead of him, but he's behind 2 injury-prone left backs. Yeah, like that's a pretty decent shout. Like, I know obviously people mention Shea Lacey, or like I said, the Fletchers as well. They both seem very talented midfielders, but you've always got more people knocking around. You want one of those positions where it's like a winger or a fullback. Centre backs and centre mids, you tend to have a lot of them in the club anyway. Yeah. And strikers is just so hard, because if you're not scoring straight away, you don't get another game. So yeah, I think Amash is definitely a massive option. I do like Kukonki and just his physical sort of profile. I know it's very, very early in his career, but someone who's just that massive at his age is just exceptional. So I'd be interested to see. I think this squad lacks a little bit of that, just sort of overwhelming physicality as well. And if he can bring some of that, then he could be someone very exciting. Just looking at where United would be needing to improve. Obviously, we've mentioned fullback areas. United don't have enough fullbacks at the minute, let alone in 4 years' time when Luke Shaw's 4 years older, and as is Mazraoui and Dallow, and all of them will be either late 20s or early 30s. Which areas do you think United would have to strengthen in the next 4 years? Because we're going to have plenty of players still here, but if you think about it as well, here's the other crucial thing to all this. We're not going to have this is only 4 years away.
there's not 3 or 4 new players in each position. Realistically, it needs to be the next 1 or 2 signings in each position are going to be here winning us the league. Like these have to be the next sort of 8 transfers United make are massive if we're actually going to do this.
Yeah, no, you're right. They are. I think you're right about the full-back position. I think striker will be interesting to see what happens with Obi Martin in the sort of mid to long term. Yep. Finn from the Academy Review was saying that he thinks he's going to be third choice striker sooner rather than later. He is going to be an option for Erik ten Hag behind Xerxes and Højlund, and maybe fourth choice if he plays Rashford down the middle as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like a central midfielder is going to be essential. I think you look at our midfield, and there's obviously Maine, who's very young, and he's got at least another decade, if not longer, well, more than a decade. And I'm hoping to see him in the United first team pretty much as a mainstay from now until well past 2028. Christian Eriksen, there was a report that maybe he's going to stay past this season. Even if he does, he's not going to. I don't think he's going to be playing for Manchester United in 2028. And also, he needs replacing soon anyway. Yeah. I think you need to be looking at another option than Christian Eriksen in for next season. Even if he stays, I don't think he's going to be starting every week. Casemiro, I'd be very, very surprised if Casemiro is still a Manchester United player this time next year. So there's 2 that are, sort of not surplus to requirements, but are going to need replacing. Ugarte is just got out. It's too soon to say what happens with him. Yeah. But you need to give yourself options. Well, you really do.
In terms of options then, so some of the names that United have been linked with in recent years, and obviously, let's not forget there's going to be a crop of people who are 15 now who are this sort of Kobbie Mainus and Garnachos of 2028 coming through end of their teenage years, pushing 20, who I don't know about. Yep. But of the people that we currently know about, players like Adam Wharton has been mentioned, obviously the up-and-coming player from Crystal Palace. You've got Angel Gomez, who runs out of contract at the end of this season, former United player, almost that kind of Paul Pogba story of going away and coming back, except we won't have to pay 90 million quid for him. There's other people as well, João Gomez, João Neves, another one that was mentioned. Obviously just had a big money move in the summer, but these sort of young players, do you see any of those coming in to Manchester United?
I think the problem you've got with him, right, if you go through them sort of individually, Adam Wharton, I think everyone's going to be in for him. I think Arsenal might even look at him, City might look at him. I know we don't know what's going to happen with him in terms of the 115 charges and all the rest of it, but he does seem to be the go-to DM for everyone. Yeah. It's like, Adam Wharton's the next big thing. Everyone wants him. Are United going to go toe-to-toe with other clubs to try and get him?
He's got a bit of that sort of Declan Rice feel to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Of like he's just, everyone's decided he's going to be great.
And he's going to cost like 140 million in United. Yeah. I think the days of us breaking transfer records are long gone. So I don't see that happening. Angel Gomez, if we can get him cheap, he could be an option. I still don't know if he's that exact type of player we need. I don't know if he is also a title-winning player. I think a lot of the hype around Angel at the minute is from what he's done for England. He's done well for England. I'm not knocking the kid. I like Angel Gomez. I've liked him since he was at the academy. Is he the answer to winning a title with bringing in a midfielder? I don't think so. And I hope, if we do, I hope he proves me wrong, but I just don't see it. João Gomez, I think out of all the ones you mentioned, that one probably makes a little bit more sense than others. Yeah. I think United historically have done that, where we've gone to the sort of mid-bottom table teams or mid to bottom table of the Premier League in the past, and we've got some of their better players when we were successful. I don't mean like recently where we've gone out and got Wan-Bissaka and Harry Maguire or whatever, where it's not quite worked out as well as we'd want to. But you look at Sir Alex Ferguson, you go and get, I don't know, a Dennis Irwin, or you go and get a Wayne Rooney. One of the I know he's a generational talent. Rooney's is a bit excessive, or Chris Smalling, or someone from that sort of mid-bottom end of the table, Edwin van der Sar, Louis Saha, like, you'd go and get them because they're players who are better than the team they're in. Yeah. And Gomez might, I don't know, I'm not seeing loads of him, but he might fit the bill where he's good enough to help you challenge for a title. He's just in a team that he's never going to get anywhere near that. Can
I give you a name that I think could make the difference? That could be a title-winning player. It might be impossible to get him.
Go on.
Cole Palmer.
Well, I'm not going to disagree on that.
He's a boyhood Man United fan. Obviously, would cost an absolute arm and a leg. He's got a 9-year contract at Chelsea. The only way he's getting out of that is if he falls out with someone, puts in a transfer request, and even then that might not be enough. I know this is just so stupid, and it's one of those things like, who do you think you are? Is Man United. He feels like a United player to me. Is that stupid? Is that just embarrassing? Or do you get what I mean?
No, it's not. And the thing is, right, we kind of have done deals like this in the past, where we've gone and got some teams' best players. Even not that long ago, Alexis Sanchez, I know he was a disaster, but was Arsenal's best player and we got him.
Yeah.
Like, you can make a deal happen. There is ways and means to make things happen, where you can just throw loads of money at it, or, as we did with Sanchez, a swap deal, where you can make it attractive, or the player can force a move if he's that keen to come to Manchester United. I think the problem we've got is there's several problems on that front. I don't think being a boyhood fan matters as much anymore as it used to. I don't think it's like... You got to remember as well, when Cole Palmer was a boyhood Manchester United fan, we probably had Rooney, Ronaldo and Tevez as our front three. We were probably winning everything. And it's like, the United he was a fan of. I know he's probably still deep down a red. It happens, but it's probably not the same. Raheem Sterling was a United fan when he was a kid. It didn't mean he was going to come to United.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes that doesn't matter, and I don't think it matters as much in the 2020s as it might have done in the 80s and the 90s or whatever. Also, the fact that the longer he stays in London, the more likely he is to get settled down there. He might start a family or whatever in the next few years. Is he going to want to move to Manchester? I know it's not a million miles away, but you don't know. Plus, there's a 9-year contract, which makes it very difficult because it's such a ridiculous contract. Let's not forget, he's signed that deal. He's not like... Obviously, he's had a conversation with his agent and his family or whatever, because I know people mock him for not being the brightest, which sometimes is a little bit harsh, but he's obviously made that commitment. So mentally, he's like, I'm going to be here for a long time. Yeah. So he must have that in the back of his mind. Like, if he didn't fancy it, if he was thinking... One day I'm going to play for Manchester United. He might have signed a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal, but he didn't. He signed a 9-year deal.
That keeps him there till he's 31 years old.
So it's like he's saying, do you know what? I'm happy here, and I'm happy to stay here. Now, obviously, that can change. We've seen it with so many players who sign long-term deals, and especially with Chelsea going around it. We don't know the ins and outs of that contract. There might be a buyout clause or some, maybe not a buyout clause, might have it, but there might be a way out of it that United can sort of exploit. But I understand your point, and I would love to see Cole Palmer at Manchester United, and I think if we got him, that'd be such a coup. The fact that he was at City, the fact he's a boyhood Manchester United fan, the fact that he's absolutely smashed it ever since he started playing in the Premier League, it'd be great. He's just the type of player we need. We need that almost talismanic-like player. I know he's only a kid, but he is like the player that everyone looks at in that team and goes, he'll make something happen.
And he does.
And we ain't got that in a minute.
No.
Since Bruno's fell off, we haven't got that talisman who you can go, he'll get us out of this one. Because that is the player that helps you win titles. That was Eric Cantona. That was Roy Keane. That was, for a brief period, it was probably Ruud van Nistelrooy. Then it was Wayne Rooney. Those are the players that could just drag you over the line. Robin van Persie did it one season. Yeah. Not just with goals, but like he's the guy you give the ball to. And Cole Palmer's that guy. So if we got him, phenomenal. If you used to put a gun to me head and said, do I think Cole Palmer will end up at Manchester United? I'd probably say no. But I love him at United. Everything about him I love. Exciting player. His attitude's great. The goals that he scores, the way that he sort of, can score all different types of goals. He can be a poacher if you need him to be. He can get in the end of things. I know he's not a striker. He can score from distance. He can run at players. He's just got a bit of everything. But even with the madness that's going on at Chelsea, that would be the maddest move ever if they let him slip from their grasp. They got lucky with him. Yeah. They hit the jackpot with him because they bought 20 players and 18 of them was shite. Yeah. And he's mint.
Yeah. Yeah, because for every Cole Palmer, there's a Mudryk, a Sterling, and Fernandes.
Whoever.
Fofana,
whoever Fofana you want to pick.
Hundreds of millions of players who just haven't been anywhere near good enough. And then you've got this one who's, I think, got more goals and assists than Haaland since he arrived at Chelsea, which is absolutely
And the
astonishing.
thing with Palmer is, I was chatting to you about this before off camera, and I used to do the podcast 3 Points in the Gaff with Mike, who's a City fan, and he was always raving about Cole Palmer, and he was on and on and on about him, and he just wouldn't stop. The Cole Palmer, how good he was, and how amazing he was, and how everyone at City loved him and was absolutely most like a lot of City fans were saying this could be a player that does more than Phil Foden. Not all of them, obviously, but there was that feeling this is a phenomenal kid. Yeah. And the fact that he didn't want to stick around and play 7 or 8 games and pick up trophies was impressive, because he could have stayed at City till he was 22, 23 or whatever, and won a load of trophies, maybe been one of those players we mentioned, rotated in, incrementally getting more and more games, but he wanted to go and start every week. And he went to Chelsea, and he might have cost him a few trophies, but it's got him into the England squad. It's got him into the England team, really, lately. And I think there's a real decision for Thomas Tuchel to make about how he's going to fit him in, because I think he should start for England.
Yeah. Just a couple of other players quickly. Xavi Simons is one that was mentioned. Obviously, he's got those links to Ruud van Nistelrooy, had his best ever season under him a couple of years ago. Do you think that he's someone that could come in, or do you think we need to kind of move away from this? The manager decides who we sign every 6 weeks or whatever.
I quite like the idea of looking further than just the Premier League, of looking a little bit differently, of looking at what's the sort of the profile of players and what they've achieved. And I think that maybe that's one thing that's held us back at times. We have been a bit Premier League heavy as a club. You look at some of the signings we've made, not always, but we've gone out and we've spent 80 million on Lukaku, 80 million on Harry Maguire, 50 million on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, 500k a week for Alexis Sanchez. These are all players that are good players, and we've bought players from overseas. But sometimes you think, well, can we get a player for sort of 40, 50 million, 60 million even from abroad, rather than 80 million, 90 million from England? So I don't know loads about him. I know people sort of rave about him for a reason. So yeah, I don't think the Ruud van Nistelrooy thing matters too much. I don't think it's like always that's the reason you should get him. The only quite slight reservation I have with that is he's I mentioned the fact you get him for 50, 60 million. He's probably going to be a bit more than that. Yeah. You might be looking at Paul Pogba figures. So if you are, that's when I think you have to go, maybe not.
Maybe chill
I just love to see Ineos earn their money. I know it's only early doors yet, but getting a player that isn't an obvious one and getting him for 40, 50, even 60 million you can stomach if it's someone who's decent, rather than just going out and getting that one where everyone's on about him. Yeah. And it's like, we'll go and get the one that everyone knew about anyway.
Even the odd 12 million
signing. Yeah, you're right, it's a good point.
Someone from other parts of the world. We should talk about this a lot. But when's the last time United signed a player that we signed them from a team in South America or a team in Asia or a team in Africa? And I'm talking continents here, but they're such big areas, and the answer is I can't think of the last time. It's a good point, because
that's
absurd.
It is absurd.
That's
You're talking about
4 or 5 billion of the Earth's population in those 3 continents, and we haven't signed anyone from any of them in decades.
No, we haven't, and it's weird because people will come out with madness. They'll say, well, we bought Djemba, he was African or whatever. You're like, what are you on about?
Yeah,
it's not got to do with anything. Like, we bought Kagawa, he didn't quite work out. Oh, right, so let's just write off an entire continent then, because we bought a player who was probably not the right player for the right time. He was a very talented kid. That's insane, and I'm not for 1 second advocating it. But these are the arguments I've heard before. Yeah. And you're like, what are you on about? Like, we should be tapping into more places than just the Premier League and just Spain and Portugal. Yeah. Like, you've got players who are amazing, playing in South America, playing in Africa, playing in Asia. And what we tend to do is we wait until a player goes from South America to Brighton.
Yeah.
And then when he's had a good season at Brighton or at Leicester or at Villa, then we'll try and get him for 70, 80 million. I understand that sometimes players who are coming from these different places have to go to a club that's bigger than where they've came from to almost mentally get ready to go to a club the size of Manchester United, because sometimes the leap from playing in, say, Africa or whatever and then going to Manchester United can be too big. It can be going, from one extreme to the other almost. It's almost a bit too much for him, but not all the time. No. And also, you can buy players and loan them out.
I know it's different as well with climate and sort of language and stuff, but you look at like Real Madrid and Barcelona over the last sort of 15, 20 years, some of their best players came from South America, or look at Messi and Vinicius Jr. and, people come from that part of the world and are amazing, obviously.
Yeah.
We know, not to mention the smaller countries, but Brazil and Argentina are consistently 2 of the best football producing countries in the world. And when's the last time we bought a player directly from either of those countries? I just think that's one thing that, looking ahead to this sort of 2028 project, if you want to call it that, not to sort of loosely insinuate Donald Trump there, but Project 2028, as I'm calling it, United need to look across the world for talent and not just do the things we already do, because that isn't working.
Was it like... We've done it in the past a bit, haven't we?
We've done it little bits here and there.
Pereira, we got him direct. Did we get him directly from
Brazil? I think so, yeah.
The Silva twins, were they directly from...
I believe they were.
Like, were they from the... Stephen House is looking at me. Did we get the Rafael de Silva and Fabio de Silva directly from Brazil? There you go, Fluminense, there you are, Stephen Howson. So It does happen. It can happen.
It does, but when
we're
was
not
that,
doing
15 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, it's something that United
And also,
just not doing.
we've got to remember as well, we're in this new era now.
Yeah.
With PSR and the Ineos and all that, where we can't, like, this is the thing where sometimes it's hard to sort of make the correlation between what City did and what we did in terms of going from a mid-table team to winning the title. I know I made that point earlier of like, oh, you know, City were 11th and then we won the title in 4 years. I do get there is a difference because you do have restrictions on spending.
But United can still spend more than most other teams in the world.
Because we earn more.
That's, I think that we should be able to get that
You're right, but my point I'm sort of saying is that maybe if you do have to sort of do things a little bit differently, maybe you can look more to places like that. Because Fergie famously, when he took over United, he tripled the amount of scouts. United should have a scouting network across the world.
I'm sure we do, you know.
No, we do, you're right.
And I don't know why we don't use it more. I genuinely don't get it, because what was it? Kagawa signed, went to Dortmund for around €300,000, and we signed him 2 or 3 years later for around €25 million or £25 million, whatever it was. And you think he was basically the same player 2 years before, and they got like a 100% or 100 times markup on him. Like, United need to be not making money and profit on players because they need to be top quality, but it's far less of a risk spending $6 million on someone than $46 million on someone.
Do you know what? You're going to go, as you go into the attackers here, there's one here that acts as a reminder of how you sometimes have to be a little bit cautious with youngsters.
Go on.
I can see on your list there you've got Evan Ferguson.
Yeah.
At Brighton, who's 19. Now, I'm not knocking the kid. Very, very talented young striker.
Still very young as well.
Still very
teenager.
Young. But about a year ago, I think was it a year ago, if he scored a hat-trick against you lot? Yeah. And it was like, everyone was raving about Evan Ferguson. Yep. He was being quoted, you're being quoted about 80, 90 million for him.
Yep.
An 18-year-old, banging in hat-tricks in the Premier League. Like, this kid is, you know, his temperament, I mentioned temperament, he seemed really level-headed. Everyone was on him, and everyone thought he's going to be the next big thing. Now, I am not for a millisecond saying he's not, and it's, you know, he's done, but he's had a rough 10, 11 months.
Yeah.
He's had a 10, 11 months where he's no longer getting into the Brighton team.
A lot of injuries.
He's not a free. He wasn't always a guaranteed start of Brighton anyway. But he's being used a lot more sparingly now than he used to be. His goals have dried up, and now there's a few more question marks about him. About even is he going to be, a sort of top level striker. Now, as I said earlier, it is far too early to tell. But the point I'm making is, if we'd have been doing this video a year ago, our opinions on Evan Ferguson would probably be a lot different than what they are now.
I mean, if you just want, even if you take this sort of opinion out of it, if you wanted to buy him 18 months ago, you're spending probably double what you'd spend now. Yeah. Like, it's that simple, isn't it, really? Like, and that's the thing, you're never certain, and especially when you're buying Premier League, you're spending so much money. Obviously, Sekou Kone is a name that has been mentioned. Producer Ethan's put his name on there, and that, you know, United scouted him from Africa, which is maybe, hopefully,
a step in the right direction.
A sign of good things.
Because you'd like to see us at least try to branch out a little bit more. And I think in the past we have done, you know, let's not forget, we've had some players at United that went on to better things elsewhere. We signed John Obi Mikel, and then he changed his mind after a week, and then ended up going to Chelsea. Yep. We had Michael Essien, and we couldn't get a work permit for him. You know, we've had players that have done very well.
Yep.
That, you know, we tried to sign, but I just feel like it's not something we do enough. No. And hopefully that'll change with Ineos, as producer Ethan's pointing out. Coney's seemed, you know, a good young DM. He might be one that in the future is the answer to that problem we mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. Right. It's only 4 years away, Jay. Very exciting times.
Don't underestimate the ability of the internet to clip us up.
Save it for 2028. We'll be sat here. United winning the title. Mainoo's playing. Rashford's still here.
People
Bruno.
Looking at it going, wow, Jay didn't used to have hair. Remember that?
Were you going to have hair by then?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Joe used to have hair.
Joe used to have hair. Jay didn't. It's like role reversal.
Right. Thanks for watching. Make sure you get your thoughts in the comments. How is it going to look? Who's going to still be here when Manchester United win the league
in
2028, if they win the league in 2028? Thanks for joining us. Hit subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We'll see you in a bit.